Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is Lizzie and Justin, and we are from Thirdspace, and we're live with the 384th week of Turning Towards Life, and you are so welcome to be with us. Thank you for joining us from wherever in the world you are, and whatever time in history you are. We are recording this in the middle of February of 2025. But we know that these conversations get time shifted, always forward in time. Lizzie, never back in time. As far as I know, nobody's listening to this in 2023, for example. That would be a miracle. But it's wonderful to be back with you all today. And we're going to do in a moment what we do every week, which is, Lizzie, you've brought us a wonderful source, which you can find on our turningtowards.life website, or in the show notes, or in the notes on YouTube, all of those places. And we're going to put, metaphorically, Lizzie, put this source in between us so that there's you and me and the source, which is you'll speak about. And then a conversation will unfold between us to who knows where, always somewhere very rich and always somewhere, for me at least, very meaningful, which is why we're still doing this 384 weeks, 7.5 years into this process. If you'd like to, all of those of you who are with us, if you'd like to be in contact with us, perhaps you'll have something to say about this conversation and want to join in with us, you can email us, hello@turningtowards.life. You can reach us on our Facebook group. And if you come across to turningtowards.life, you can also find ways to subscribe so this gets in your mailbox and you can support us too, which is always very gorgeous and delightful when people decide to do that. But even if you're here and listening, that's support too, and we're very glad to be alongside you. And Lizzie, it's great to be back with you, and thank you for bringing us this marvellous source you brought us this morning.
Thank you, Justin. Hello, everybody, and welcome back, or welcome if this is the first time that you're here. We are, as ever, held by Turning Towards Life, as maybe you are. And it's a delight to be here and to step into the field that is this thing that is now a full-on self after all these years, Justin. And I feel so grateful that this is here. So thank you. And this is a piece of this wonderful book called Faith, Hope and Carnage by the wonderful Nick Cave. And as I understand it, a friend of his, Seán O'Hagan. And they're essentially in conversation. Justin, I know you've read this as well, this book. And Nick Cave gives me deep kind of hope in the world. And I know we both follow the Red Hand Files, which is this wonderful thing that you can receive into your inbox of all of the encounters and letters between him and his friends in the world, I guess you could say, all the people in the world writing to him and him responding, like the kind of best kind of agony aunt as we might know it from old. So it's a conversation between Nick and Seán, and this is a little piece toward the end of the book. And Seán says to Nick, as a summary of what's just been said previously, so essentially what you're doing as an artist is constantly stumbling forward. And then Nick replies and says, stumbling forward is a beautiful way of putting it, Seán, but I wonder if the notion of forwardness is correct. Perhaps what I mean to say is that although we feel we are moving in a forward direction, in my estimation, we are forever moving in a circular way, with all the things we love and remember in tow, and carrying all our needs and yearnings and hurts along with us, and all the people who have poured themselves into us and made us what we are, and all the ghosts who travel with us. It's like we're running towards God, but that God's love is also the wind that is pushing us on as both the impetus and the destination, and it resides in both the living and the dead. Around and around we go, encountering the same things again and again. But within this movement, things happen that change us, annihilate us, shift our relationship to the world. It is this circular reciprocal motion that grows more essential and affirming and necessary with each turn.
Thank you, Lizzie. So I'm going to read this again. My goodness. Nick Cave's writing is such a gift. I'm so pleased that you've brought him back into our orbit, Lizzie, and I want to emphasize again to make a shout out for his Red Hand Files, which are freely available on the web and really worth reading and subscribing to. But this is from as you say, from his book, Faith, Hope and Carnage. And Seán says, so essentially what you're doing as an artist is constantly stumbling forward. And Nick says, stumbling forward is a beautiful way of putting it, Seán, but I wonder if the notion of forwardness is correct. Perhaps what I mean to say is that although we feel we're moving in a forward direction, in my estimation, we are forever moving in a circular way, with all the things we love and remember in tow, and carrying all our needs and yearnings and hurts along with us, and all the people who have poured themselves into us and made us what we are, and all the ghosts who travel with us. It's like we're running towards God, but that God's love is also the wind that is pushing us on, as both the impetus and the destination. And it resides in both the living and the dead. Around and around we go, encountering the same things again and again, but within this movement, things happen that change us, annihilate us, shift our relationship to the world. It's this circular, reciprocal motion that grows more essential and affirming and necessary with each turn.
Thank you, Justin. So Nick's writing, Nick's way of expressing what it is to be human somehow throws me into the process somehow. I can't really describe it very well, actually, but as you were reading, I felt myself thrown kind of around and around and feeling all of the familiarity of life and all of this thing of encountering the same thing again and being changed by it and or annihilated by it, and my relationship to the world shifting all the time, and how it could be possible to feel monotony or something of the sameness of the familiarity of life, like the familiarity of each time the children get ill, or the familiarity of each time I have an argument with someone that I normally have an argument with, or the familiarity of doing something profoundly joyful and meaningful. But it feels very true to me that in that motion of the again and againness and the being kind of thwacked by the same thing each time, I'm being kind of forged. So this circular motion that Nick talks about, this kind of spiral, if you like, and how we travel and how we might hit the same vertical or something, but we're always at a different spot in the spiral. It feels very true, and I'm appreciating that this passage also puts me in contact with how non-singular we are. You know, that the world is impacting us in all these different ways, that the people who've poured themselves into us are right here now, that history is present in us, that the present is present in us, that we have all of our yearnings and our longings and our missed opportunities and our grief, and there's so much that belongs. And we've said this 1,000 million times, Justin, but the vastness suddenly feels very present to me. The vastness of one being, of me, of you. We are so, so vast. And in that sense, moving forwards or backwards seems far too small a measure for what a human does, like just because of the vastness. And so to feel like there's a space that we rotate in, that we're circular inside of, that we are constantly being shaped, feels a much more appropriate way of relating to the journey of being human. And I'm feeling in awe of how life has its way with us and how it shapes us every single day, and the again and againness of everything, and that life and death are not separate, and it's included in both of those things.
I love this thing that Nick says, Lizzie, where he says, although we feel we're moving in a forward direction, really it's probably more true to say we're ever moving in a circular way, with everything in tow. And as you were talking, I started to see this in a new way that I don't think I've ever seen before. So in one way, it's understandable that we feel like we're moving in a forward direction, partly because of the stories we have in our culture about time. And if you've ever done elementary school age maths or something, you've probably we've all done this thing where we've drawn a graph, and time goes along the bottom and something happens along the top. Time is t, and it goes up and up and up, and it goes in a straight line. And because a lot of things, when we see something moving in a straight line, like if you watch a car coming towards you or you plot something on a graph, it looks like time is linear. It was over there and it's going, and it's here, and now it's here, and now it's here, and now it's here. So it looks like things go in a straight line, but that's not really what time is. When you feel about the experience of time, it's not linear at all. It doesn't move like that. That's just the mathematical version of time. But the actual version of time that we live isn't like that at all. Like, I'm sitting here with you now, and present with me are all the times that we've done this before. Not in all of their detail. I don't remember all 383 previous ones, but it seems to me that inevitably this conversation is in resonance with all of them, including the one, I was thinking about this morning, the one where you and I sat on a train and hatched the idea of having this conversation. That's here too now. So the past is present in this, as is the future, even because I'm talking about it now, so many people are coming into my mind and heart from different parts of my life. So first of all, everything's present always. That's the first thing. It's not linear, like I was here and I'm here and I'm here. It's the first bit that occurred to me. The second thing that occurred to me whilst you were talking that I hadn't thought about before was there's a real problem with the linear notion of time. Because if as Nick says, it's sort of true we're going in a forward direction, but not really the deeper truth. The forward direction of all of our lives is towards death. It's always towards the ending of our life. And if you put it linearly, where am I now? I'm going towards death. And so many of the stories about linear time in our culture are to do with progress. I'm going to get better and better and better, and I'm, one thing and another thing I'm going to achieve, and I'm going to accumulate, and I'm going to achieve whatever it is, success, or it might be money, or it might be self-esteem, or it might be reputation, or it might be achievements, or it might be whatever. But that line ends with a full stop. It ends with our whatever happens being unable to do any of those things anymore. And it doesn't seem to me like it's one of a number of useful stories, but it doesn't seem to me like it's the best story for our lives, because it's ultimately, in that regard, it's ultimately fruitless. I went from here to here, except I ended up where I started again. I came from a great mystery and I end up going back to a great mystery, and in between there's this something. So although there are things like cars driving along roads, or building a business, or raising a family and watching them grow, or there are lots of things where things do go in a sort of way linearly, it seems to me it's such it's a really hollow is not the right word. It's not sufficient story about what our lives is, and it adds up to lots of suffering, because if I'm making art like Nick is, and my art stumbles and doesn't go in a direction that I think it's going to go, well, then I've failed. Or if things aren't getting better and better all the time, then I failed. Or if I'm not getting stronger, I failed. Or if I'm not getting... And it can be wonderful in all of those ways to develop and to gather and to... we need better stories than that one. We need not only to live in the linear story, and the way you're talking and the way Nick is writing invites us into a story which is also true and far more, it seems to me, resonant and appropriate for the actual experience of being alive, which is very, very rarely like a line on a graph, or a car coming down the road, or a line of achievement, even if we are achieving very much with our lives.
I'm noticing, Justin, that as you're talking, I can feel the difference in my experience of treating myself like a linear something versus treating myself like Nick's invitation of this big pot, essentially, of my experiences, of things that aren't even my experience, but they belong with me somehow, where I'm an ongoing mixture, an ever flavorful mixture of life, that probably where the pot kind of becomes more nuanced in its flavor and its content, somehow feels much more dignifying and meeting of my experience of being a human being than the kind of reductionist pressure of there's time and there's things to get done and I need to get it done and I need to feel this by the time this happens or something. I can feel the kind of squeezy fearfulness in me when I treat myself and life as finite and time-bound and reduced versus seeing myself as this circular process of encounters and being changed and learning and shifting. And even just talking about time, Justin does this thing. I think time's such a central construct in our culture. And then when we'd say anything that undoes it, I can feel myself kind of discombobulating, disintegrating somehow in a very good way, because it brings gaps for me where light can get in, where difference can get in, where newness can come in, where learning things can come in. So it kind of blows things apart in my experience of life. Just to even talk about time, to say the things that you're saying, and to read Nick's work. And in that kind of blown apartness, new things can get into the cauldron of life that is seemingly mine or belongs to me or is in my experience. And so I'm sitting in that experience now and also feeling connected just into an experience I once had where I was walking along pavement and I suddenly realised that time was a thing that was a construct rather than a truth. Like the earth is true, like soil feels true to me, but time doesn't have a physical existence. It's a thing that we've made to be able to manage things and do things, like you said, and measure things and all those things. But until that point, I hadn't realised that humans had made time. I just thought it was a thing that existed. And when that happened, I felt like my whole world fall apart and like kind of fell away. Like all the things I had relied on kind of fell. And I thought, well, how do I move my feet? Like, how do I think? Like, what do I do next? And so I just had to stop and just kind of look around and watch everybody moving on the pavement around me, just to have a moment to allow what was happening to happen, because it was far too big for my habitual self to handle and to hold. So I really had to breathe. And I'm feeling that now. And I'm a different person now, because that was quite a long while ago. And I can see that now it's like, look at that. There's something that's disorganizing me. How curious, and what's here? I feel like I can be in relationship with it. So like Nick's saying, it's like I've encountered this kind of arresting conversation about time at different points in my life. And each time it shifts my relationship to the world. And then I encounter time differently because I got shifted last time. And I feel like in the opening of that, like when we get to look at the constructions and for a minute open it out and deconstruct it slightly so that we can learn, or that we can see things in a new way, or live in a different experience for a moment than we're used to, it really does alter my experience of being human. And so I'm feeling very grateful to the ones who do this, who write things that invite us into these conversations, who find a poem coming to them and sharing it that then has us see differently, or learn differently, or feel differently, or experience in a new way. And in a way, this word stumbling really appeals to me, because I do feel when this opening happens, it is like a stumble. It's like, I don't know the answers. I don't know. And yet it feels so important to not know, and to feel in, and to trust that there are connections that hold us in the new territory, the kind of the edge that this feels like to shimmy into, to stumble into, to wonder about, and to cultivate that kind of okayness with unknownness and uncertainty, and having a way of taking a deep breath and saying yes to unfamiliarness.
That there's a way that time is a human construct, that how we experience time, such an extraordinary thing to see, Lizzie. The stories about time are stories. And it's striking me to say that I was remembering there's a sculpture in the British Museum here in London, not the British Museum, in the Tate Gallery here in London. Very famous sculpture by Jacob Epstein called Jacob and the Angel, which is one of my favourite sculptures in the world. It's a giant alabaster thing, really worth seeing. And they put it in the middle of a round, like a rotunda in the museum, so you can walk around every side of it. And when you look at the front, it looks one way, but the back is amazing as well. It's got the back of the angel's wings, and but from the back you can only see the back. You can only see the angel. You can't see Jacob, who he's holding, and on the other side you can see Jacob and the angel. It's an amazing thing to walk around, and each time you go, something else comes into view. And I think that that's what Nick is talking about time here, that time is more like life coming into view from many, many, many different angles, and then coming into view again from many, many different angles, and then coming into view again. And it's not that we're not changing. In fact, he says within this movement, things happen that change us and shift our annihilate us. Things die and things get born and shift our relationship to the world. And as we go round, I think this is amazing language, we are running towards something. He says running towards God, and that word could mean many things to different people, but we're moving towards, but we're also being blown round by the same thing that we're running towards, which is life itself is both moving us and we're moving towards it. So in this view, it's like circumambulating around a something so that it keeps on revealing itself. And it was making me think that we're so messed up, I think, broadly in our wider culture with narratives of youth and age, that because of the linear narrative, we think youth must be fantastic because you've got all of that ahead of you. If it's linear, to go up the graph or whatever it is. But the problem with it is that graph runs out. So at a certain point, you start to become one of those ones who's of less value because you haven't got the linear path ahead of you. But from this point of view, we're deepening and deepening as we go around in deepening and widening circles. And so to have fewer years left of life, and none of us know how many years we have left of life, is not an issue in the same way. It's not the same question. Because to be one who's gone round many times, and to have life being revealed to us, and then you might say, looking from this point of view, that the point of our lives is not to walk the linear, thing, which anyway just ends in that way. It's to be one. Maybe what we're here to do is in one way, is to participate more and more fully in life, to become more and more in relationship with life as we go, and also to witness in a more full way as we go round and round and round. Not so that we accumulate memories or something like that, but so that we this word actually that Nick says, it become more essential and necessary. Our living becomes more essential and necessary with every turn. And then we could look at our lives and the losses in them, and all the ways that life doesn't go the way that we want. We can start, there's a different story to have about, I didn't accumulate this, or I didn't achieve that, or I did. Let's celebrate all the achievements and all of that, but it doesn't add up to the sum of the value of a life that I achieved this or I didn't achieve this.
Yeah.
There's a whole other process running towards God. And again, I want to say that there's so many different ways of taking that word and what it might mean, but running towards and being pushed on at the same time in a circular, reciprocal movement. In other words, we're living and being lived simultaneously. And our work is to keep on going round and letting ourselves be changed by it, carrying all the people and all the things we love and remember in tow, and all our needs and yearnings and hurts, and all the people who have poured themselves into us and made us what we are, and the ghosts who travel with us deeper and deeper into our lives.
So beautiful, Justin. I can feel my system is so up for taking a breath and receiving this. And I want to say a big, big thank you to Nick and Seán for being in that conversation that made Faith, Hope and Carnage. It's a properly beautiful, heart-achingly brilliant book. And maybe Nick and Seán, one day you're listening, and if you ever are, by some miracle, we want to thank you here sincerely for getting it down on paper and having it be in the world and letting all of us be impacted by your words and your conversation and the life within that book. And Justin, I want to thank you for also loving Nick the way you love Nick, and for allowing all these things to be at the centre of us. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next week.